The signal came at 3 in the morning, Earth Standard Time. It cut through the darkness of space like a scream, bouncing off relay stations and satellites until it reached the massive communication array orbiting Earth. The technicians who first heard it did not understand the language, but they understood the tone. It was the sound of desperation. It was the sound of a world dying. Admiral Laura Grant was pulled from her sleep by her personal communicator. She was 62 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many wars. She had hoped to retire in peace, to spend her remaining years watching the sun set over the Pacific Ocean. But the universe had other plans. She arrived at Earth Command within the hour. The building was a fortress of steel and glass, buried deep in the Rocky Mountains. Screens covered every wall, showing data from 1,000 different sources. Officers rushed between stations, their faces pale with worry. "Show me," Laura said. The main screen flickered to life. A face appeared, but it was not human. The creature had skin that glowed with soft blue light and eyes like pools of liquid silver. Its features were delicate, almost beautiful, but twisted now with terror. Laura recognized the species immediately. They were one of the oldest and kindest civilizations in the known galaxy. They had welcomed humanity into the stars 300 years ago, when humans were still learning to build their first interstellar ships. The on-the-screen spoke in a trembling voice. The translation software converted the words into English, but it could not hide the fear behind them. "Please," they said, "we are dying. They have come. Our fleet is destroyed. Our cities burn. We have days, perhaps hours, before they take everything. We beg you. We beg anyone who can hear this. Help us." The message ended. The screen went dark. Laura stood in silence for a long moment. Around her, the officers waited for orders. They knew what they were. Everyone in the galaxy knew. The Dominion was a nightmare-given form. They were creatures, massive and ruthless, driven by a hive mind that saw all other life as nothing more than resources to be harvested. They had conquered 17 civilizations. They had never been stopped. The Galactic Accord, the great alliance of peaceful species, had declared the too dangerous to confront. Their official policy was simple: stay away. Do not engage. Let them take what they want and hope they leave the rest alone. Laura thought about the who had appeared on the screen. She thought about the millions of others on that world, hiding in ruins, watching the sky fill with enemy ships. She thought about the debt humanity owed to a species that had shown them kindness when they were young and lost among the stars. "Get me the council," she said. The emergency session lasted 4 hours. Representatives from every major Earth government argued and debated and shouted at each other. Some wanted to send the entire fleet. Others wanted to do nothing, to protect Earth's own colonies and let them face their fate alone. In the end, they reached the same conclusion that species across the galaxy had reached for centuries. They were too powerful. The risk was too great. Earth could not afford to start a war it could not win. Laura listened to all of it. She nodded at the right moments and said the right words. And when the session ended, she returned to her private office and locked the door behind her. She sat at her desk and opened a file that officially did not exist. It was buried under layers of encryption and security protocols, hidden so deep that even the most senior members of the government did not know about it. The file was called Omega Protocol. Humanity had changed since the early days of space travel. They had become diplomats and artists, traders and explorers. They had built a reputation as a peaceful species, friendly and cooperative, easy to work with. And most of that reputation was true, but it was not the whole truth. The whole truth was that humanity had not forgotten its past. They remembered the wars that had nearly destroyed their world. They remembered the weapons they had built, the horrors they had unleashed upon each other. They remembered what they were capable of when pushed to the edge. The Omega Protocol was humanity's darkest secret. It was a list of names, men and women who had been identified as the most dangerous humans alive. Killers, strategists, survivors, People who had done terrible things and been locked away, hidden from a galaxy that believed humans were harmless. The protocol existed for one purpose only. If humanity ever faced a threat that could not be defeated through diplomacy or conventional warfare, these people would be released. Laura scrolled through the list. She read the names and the crimes attached to them. Murder, treason, war crimes, genocide. These were not heroes. They were monsters in human form. And yet, looking at the distress signal from Prime, Laura knew they were exactly what the situation required. She stopped at one name, Jake, former commander of the Special Operations Division. He had led a unit during the Colony Wars, a brutal conflict that humanity tried very hard to forget. His unit had been sent to pacify a rebellious colony. They had succeeded. The colony no longer existed. Neither did anyone who had lived there. Jake had been court-martialed and sentenced to life in an orbital prison. He had been there for 15 years. According to his psychological evaluations, he felt no remorse for what he had done. He believed he had followed orders and done his duty. He was, by every measure, a dangerous man. Laura pressed a button on her desk. A secure channel opened. "Prepare a transport to the facility," she said. "I need to speak with prisoner." 2 days later, Laura stood in a cold, gray room on a station orbiting Neptune. Jake sat across from her, his wrists bound to the table. He was 48 years old, but he looked older. Prison had carved lines into his face and stolen the color from his hair. But his eyes were the same as they had been in his file photos. Cold, calculating, alive. "Admiral Grant," Jake said, "I assume this is not a social visit." Laura slid a tablet across the table. On it was the distress signal from Prime. "I have a job for you," she said. "A species that helped us when we were young is about to be destroyed. The Galactic Accord will not help them. Earth's government will not help them. But I will, and I need someone who can do what needs to be done." Jake watched the message. His expression did not change. "And if I refuse?" he asked. "Then you go back to your cell and die there." Jake was silent for a long moment. Then slowly he smiled. "When do we start?" The facility on the dark side of the moon had no official name. It did not appear on any map or database. To the few people who knew it existed, it was simply called the Vault. It was a place where humanity stored the things it wanted to forget. Jake arrived there 3 days after his meeting with Admiral Grant. The transport ship descended through an artificial crater, passing through layers of reinforced steel and energy shields before finally docking in an underground hangar. Jake stepped off the ship and looked around. The air was cold and smelled like recycled oxygen. The walls were bare metal, lit by harsh white lights. It felt like a tomb. A young officer met him at the door. Her name was Captain Amy Torres, and she had been assigned to assist with the mission. She was nervous around Jake. He could see it in the way she kept her distance, the way her hand stayed close to her sidearm. He did not blame her. He knew what he was. He knew what people thought of him. "This way, Commander," Amy said. "The others are waiting." She led him through a maze of corridors until they reached a large room filled with chairs and screens. 11 people sat scattered around the space, all of them wearing the same gray prison uniforms that Jake wore. They looked up when he entered. Some of them nodded. Others stared with open hostility. None of them looked afraid. Jake studied each face. He knew some of them by reputation, others he had never heard of, but they all had one thing in common. They were survivors. They had done terrible things to stay alive, and they had been punished for it. Now they had been given a second chance. Admiral Grant appeared on the main screen at the front of the room. Her face was tired but determined. "Thank you all for coming," she said. "I know most of you did not have a choice, but I want you to understand what you are being asked to do. The is under attack by the Dominion. If we do nothing, an entire species will be enslaved or exterminated within the next 2 weeks. The Galactic Accord has refused to help. Earth's official position is that we cannot risk a war with the, but I believe we have a moral obligation to help those who helped us, and I believe you are the only ones who can do it." She paused to let the words sink in. If you succeed, you will receive full pardons. Your records will be sealed. You will be free to live whatever life you choose. If you fail, you will die far from home and no one will ever know what happened to you. If any of you wish to refuse, you may return to your cells now. There will be no punishment. No one moved. Grant nodded slowly. Good. Commander will lead the mission. Captain Torres will provide logistical support. Your ship is waiting in the hangar. It is called the Nightfall. It is the fastest and most advanced stealth vessel ever built. You will have no backup, no extraction plan, and no official acknowledgement from Earth. You are on your own. The screen went dark. Jake stood up and faced his new team. He did not smile. He did not offer words of comfort or inspiration. He simply looked at each of them and spoke the truth. I am not going to pretend this is a noble mission, he said. We are not heroes. We are not soldiers fighting for a just cause. We are killers being sent to kill. The only difference is that this time we will be killing the right people. If you have a problem with that, speak now. Silence. Good, let me tell you who you are working with. He pointed to a woman with short red hair and sharp green eyes. Cross, former intelligence operative. She destabilized 3 planetary governments before she was caught. She knows more secrets than anyone in this room, and she knows how to use them. Smiled slightly but said nothing. Jake pointed to a tall man with burned scars covering half his face. Holt, combat engineer. He designed weapons that were so effective, Earth banned them and tried to pretend they never existed. He built them anyway. The scars are from testing his own creations. Grunted in acknowledgement. Jake pointed to a thin woman with glasses and an unsettling calm in her eyes. Dr. Lisa Vance. She has studied more alien species than anyone alive. She knows their biology, their psychology, their weaknesses. She knows exactly how to kill every species she has ever examined. Lisa adjusted her glasses and offered a polite nod. Jake pointed to a massive man with dark skin and hands like stone. Cole, close combat specialist. His entire squad was killed on a hostile alien world. He spent 3 years alone in the wilderness, hunted by creatures that should have torn him apart. He killed every single one of them and walked out carrying their bones as trophies. Said nothing, his expression did not change. Jake pointed to a young woman with short hair and a cocky grin. Bray, pilot. She has never lost a dogfight. She was court-martialed for disobeying orders during the Titan uprising. The orders were to abandon civilians to die. She refused. Winked at him. Jake continued down the line, introducing each member of the team. Danny Park, the demolitions expert who could blow up anything and make it look like an accident. Wright, the sniper who had once killed a target from 3 kilometers away in a sandstorm. Blake, the youngest of the group, a hacker who had broken into every secure system in the Galactic Accord before he turned 20. And 4 others, each with skills that made them valuable and histories that made them dangerous. When he finished, Jake looked at the group as a whole. They were broken people, damaged by war and prison and the things they had done to survive. But they were also strong. They had endured things that would have destroyed anyone else, and they had come out the other side still breathing. They have never been defeated, Jake said. They have conquered 17 civilizations. They are stronger than us, faster than us, and there are more of them than we can count. By every logical measure, we should lose this fight. He paused. But we are not logical. We are human, and humans have spent their entire history doing things that should have been impossible. We hunted animals 10 times our size. We survived ice ages and plagues and wars that burned half our planet. We crawled out of the mud and built cities and ships and weapons that could crack worlds in half. We are the most dangerous things to ever come out of Earth, and Earth is one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. He looked at each face in the room. They do not know what is coming for them. They think they understand war. They think they understand violence, but they have never faced humans before. Not really. not the kind of humans who remember what we used to be. He turned toward the door. Get your gear, we leave in 1 hour. As the team filed out, Cross walked beside Jake. She studied him with those sharp green eyes. You really think we can win this? She asked. Jake did not hesitate. No, he said, but I think we can make them bleed, and sometimes that is enough. Nightfall dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, and the crew saw hell. The main screen showed a planet surrounded by fire. Prime had once been beautiful, a world of blue oceans and glowing forests and cities that sparkled like jewels in the night. Now it was burning. Massive ships hung in orbit, their hulls black and angular like the shells of dead insects. Smaller vessels swarmed between them, hunting refugee ships that tried desperately to escape. On the surface below, huge machines crawled across the land, tearing up everything in their path. Forests, cities, mountains. Nothing was spared. Bray sat at the pilot station, her hands steady on the controls despite the horror on the screen. She had seen war before. She had seen death and destruction on scales that would break most people. But this was different. This was not a battle. This was extermination. How many ships? Jake asked quietly. Cross studied the sensor data. Her face was pale, but her voice remained calm. 312 warships, she said, plus support vessels and ground forces. The orbital stations are destroyed. Defense forces are gone. There is no organized resistance. Holt let out a low whistle. 12 of us against 300 ships. Those are not great odds. We are not here to fight their fleet, Jake said. We are here to cut off the head. He pulled up a holographic display showing the formation. At the center of the armada floated a ship larger than all the others. It was massive, nearly 5 kilometers long, covered in organic growths and pulsing with strange lights. It looked less like a vessel and more like a living creature. The queen ship, Lisa Vance said. They are a hive species. Their queen controls the entire Dominion through a psychic link. Every drone, every soldier, every ship commander receives orders directly from her mind. Without the queen, the hive falls apart. So we kill the queen, Cole said simply. Easier said than done, replied. That ship is protected by the entire fleet. We cannot fight our way through. We do not have to, Jake said. Can you get us in without being detected? Studied the formation for a moment. Her eyes moved rapidly, calculating trajectories and patterns. Then she smiled. It will be rough, she said, but yes, I can do it. Jake nodded. Then here is the plan. We hit them from every direction at once. We'll infiltrate their communication network and fill it with noise. Confusion, false signals, anything to make them hesitate. We'll deploy his toys and start destroying their support ships. Lisa will guide us to the queen ship's weak points. Danny and the others will come with me for the boarding action. He looked at each member of the team. We will only get one chance at this. Once they know we are here, they will throw everything they have at us. We need to move fast and hit hard. No hesitation, no mercy. The nightfall slid through the darkness like a ghost, flew with a skill that bordered on supernatural, weaving between debris fields and sensor sweeps with impossible precision. The stealth systems hummed softly, bending light and absorbing energy signatures until the ship was nearly invisible. As they approached, the armada went to work. Her fingers danced across keyboards as she broke through layer after layer of security. The aliens had never faced human hackers before. Their encryption was designed to stop other hive minds, not individual geniuses who thought in ways they could not comprehend. Within minutes, she was inside their network. Beginning psychological operations, she said. The communication channels erupted in chaos, flooded them with sounds designed to trigger fear responses. Distorted screams and predatory growls pulled from the most terrifying creatures in human history. She broadcast images of death and destruction, memories of the colony wars manipulated to show what humans could do when pushed to violence. She sent false orders and contradictory signals, making the hive mind stumble and question itself. For the first time in their history, the experienced doubt. Holt launched his weapons. Canisters shot from the nightfall, spreading across the fleet before detonating. Swarms poured out, microscopic machines that ate through metal and electronics with terrible efficiency. Support ships began to fall silent as their systems were devoured from the inside. Biological agents followed, payloads designed specifically for physiology. Drones collapsed in their stations. Soldiers clawed at their own bodies as their nervous systems burned. The armada began to fracture. Ships broke formation, some trying to locate the source of the attacks, others simply reacting to the chaos in their minds. The perfect coordination of the hive was shattering. "Now," Jake said, "get us to the Queen ship." Push the Nightfall forward. An interceptor appeared in their path, but she rolled underneath it before the pilot could react. Another ship tried to block them, and she threaded between its weapons with centimeters to spare. Alarms blared. Energy beams sliced through the space around them, but did not slow down. They reached the Queen ship and found a docking port near the rear. The Nightfall latched on, and the boarding team assembled at the airlock. Jake checked his weapon, a heavy rifle designed for close combat. Beside him, Cole cracked his knuckles. Danny Park carried a bag full of explosives. Wright held her sniper rifle close. Blake had a small computer strapped to his arm, ready to hack any system they encountered. "Remember," Jake said, "they are stronger and faster than us. They have armor that can stop most weapons. They have claws that can tear through steel. They outnumber us by thousands to one." He smiled grimly. "But they have never fought humans before. They do not know what we are. They think we are soft, weak prey." He looked at his team. "Show them how wrong they are." The airlock opened, and they charged into darkness. The Queen ship was a nightmare made real. The walls were organic, covered in slime and pulsing veins. The air was thick and hot, filled with strange smells. Shapes moved in the shadows, creatures with too many limbs and mandibles that dripped with venom. The first drone attacked within seconds. It was 3 meters tall, covered in black chitin, with claws like swords. It lunged at Jake with terrifying speed. Jake did not flinch. He had faced worse. He had been worse. He fired 3 shots into the creature's chest, then ducked under its claws and drove his combat knife into its throat. The drone collapsed, twitching. More came, dozens of them, the corridors filled with enemies. And the humans began to fight. The battle inside the Queen ship was unlike anything they had ever experienced. For thousands of years, they had conquered species across the galaxy. They had faced armies and fleets in desperate last stands. They had always won. Their strength was unmatched, their numbers endless, their coordination perfect. But they had never faced humans. Jake moved through the corridors like a force of nature. His rifle fired in controlled bursts, each shot finding weak points in armor. When the ammunition ran low, he switched to his pistol. When that was empty, he used his knife. When his knife broke off in a drone's skull, he used his fists. He did not stop. He did not slow down. He did not hesitate. Behind him, his team fought with the same relentless fury. Cole tore through enemies with his bare hands, his massive frame shrugging off blows that would have killed ordinary men. He grabbed a soldier by its throat and crushed its windpipe, then used the body as a shield against incoming fire. His face was covered in blood, some of it his own, most of it not. He was smiling. Wright found a position at the end of a corridor and set up her rifle. She could not miss. Every shot found its target, dropping drones before they could reach the rest of the team. When a group tried to flank her, she pulled out her sidearm and killed them without looking away from her scope. She was calm, focused, deadly. Danny Park ran ahead, planting explosives at key structural points. He moved with practiced efficiency, his hands steady despite the chaos around him. Every few minutes, another explosion rocked the ship, collapsing tunnels and trapping enemy reinforcements. He was laughing as he worked, the sound almost lost in the noise of battle. Blake stayed close to Jake, his fingers flying across his portable computer. He hacked into the ship systems, locking doors to slow the enemy and opening paths for the team. He redirected power, shutting down weapon systems and disabling defenses. He was young, barely 25, but his mind was sharper than any blade. They did not understand what was happening. Their hive minds screamed with confusion and rage. These creatures were supposed to be weak. Their intelligence reports said humans were diplomats and traders, artists and explorers, soft beings who avoided conflict. But these humans were not soft. They were predators. They killed with an efficiency and brutality that they had never encountered. The team pushed deeper into the ship, leaving a trail of bodies behind them. They lost contact with the nightfall halfway through. His voice crackled over the radio one last time, warning them that enemy ships were closing in, and then there was only static. They did not know if she was alive or dead. They could not stop to find out. They reached a massive chamber filled with eggs. Thousands of them, maybe millions, each one containing a new drone waiting to be born. Lisa Vance studied the room with cold, professional interest. "The nursery," she said. "If we destroy this, we cripple their ability to replace losses for years." Jake nodded at Danny. "Do it." Danny set the charges with particular care. When they left the chamber, it erupted in flame behind them. The screams of the dying eggs echoed through the ship, and somewhere in the distance, the queen herself cried out in rage. They encountered the elite guard near the queen's chamber. These were not ordinary drones. They were larger, faster, and covered in armor that deflected most weapons. There were dozens of them, forming a wall of chitin and claws between the team and their target. The first clash was brutal. 2 team members fell in the opening seconds, cut down by blades that moved too fast to see. Jake watched them die and felt nothing. There was no time for grief, no room for hesitation. He charged forward, firing at anything that moved. Danny Park died holding a corridor. A group of elites tried to flank the team, and he stayed behind to stop them. He planted his last explosive on his own chest and waited until they were close. "Tell the queen I said hello," he said into his radio. The explosion killed 17 elites and collapsed the tunnel. Danny Park was gone. Wright died protecting Blake. An elite broke through the line and went for the hacker, put herself between them, emptying her rifle into the creature's face. It killed her with its dying breath, driving a claw through her chest. She did not scream. She just looked at with calm eyes. "Finish the mission," she whispered. Blake died at the reactor. Lisa Vance had identified a weakness in the Queen ship's power core. If they could overload it, the explosion would destroy the vessel and everyone aboard, including the Queen. But the system was protected by security that could not be hacked remotely. Someone had to do it manually. Someone had to stay behind. Volunteered. He was the only one who could do it fast enough. He smiled at Jake as he walked toward the console. "I was never going to get a pardon anyway," he said. "Too many governments want me dead. This is a better ending than I deserve." He began typing. The security systems fell one by one. "Go," he said. "You have 5 minutes." Jake wanted to say something, wanted to thank him or apologize or offer some comfort, but there was no time. He grabbed the survivors and ran. The Queen's chamber was at the heart of the ship. It was vast, a cathedral of flesh and bone, lit by bioluminescent growths that pulsed with sickly light. And at the center, surrounded by her final guards, sat the Queen herself. She was massive, 10 meters tall, her body a grotesque fusion of insect and something older, something alien in a way that made the human mind recoil. Her eyes, dozens of them, fixed on Jake and his remaining team. Her voice came through a translation device mounted in the floor, cold and ancient. "You are nothing," she said. "Insects. Your species will burn for this insult. We will we will take your children. We will feast on your flesh for 1,000 years." Jake looked at her. He was bleeding from wounds he could not count. His team was down to 4 people. The ship was going to explode in minutes. By every measure, he had already lost. But he smiled. "You do not understand," he said. "We are not the best humanity has to offer. We are the worst. We are the murderers and the war criminals and the monsters that our species locks away and tries to forget. If the worst of us can do this to you, imagine what happens when you make the rest of them angry." He raised his hand. In it was a detonator. "Planted charges while you were talking." The Queen had one moment to feel fear. Then the world turned to fire. The Queenship died in a storm of light and flame. The explosion tore through its organic hull, ripping apart chambers and corridors and the countless drones still inside. The shockwave spread outward, slamming into nearby vessels and sending them spinning into each other. And then something stranger happened. Across the Armada, they began to scream. The psychic link that connected them to their queen snapped like a broken wire, leaving thousands of minds suddenly alone for the first time in their lives. Drones collapsed at their stations. Soldiers turned on each other in blind panic. Ships crashed into one another as pilots lost the ability to coordinate. The perfect unity of the hive shattered into chaos. On the surface of Prime, they watched in disbelief. The harvesting machines stopped moving. The enemy soldiers who had been hunting them suddenly became confused and disorganized. And in the sky above, the great armada began to tear itself apart. The Nightfall was still alive. Bray had performed a miracle, keeping the ship flying through waves of enemy fire while her crew fought inside the Queenship. When the explosion happened, she was already moving, racing toward the debris field to find any survivors. She found 4. Jake floated in the vacuum, his suit breached and his oxygen running low. Beside him was Cole, unconscious but breathing. Lisa Vance had managed to seal herself in an escape pod moments before the blast, and Cross had somehow made it back to a secondary airlock before the ship came apart. Of the 12 who had entered the Queenship, only these 4 remained. Brought them aboard and set a course for the edge of the system. Behind them, the Armada continued to destroy itself. Ships fled in random directions, their crews driven mad by the loss of their queen. Those that remained fought each other, old rivalries and suppressed instincts suddenly unleashed without the hive mind to control them. The Resistance, which had been hiding in ruins and caves across the planet, began to emerge. They watched the sky clear of enemy ships and could not believe what they were seeing. Some fell to their knees and wept. Others raised their voices in songs of gratitude that echoed across the devastated landscape. They did not know who had saved them, not yet, but they would learn. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. The Nightfall's hyperspace drive was damaged, forcing them to make frequent stops for repairs. Jake spent most of the trip in the medical bay, recovering from wounds that should have killed him. Sat beside his bed, silent and watchful. Lisa worked on her reports, documenting everything they had learned about the. Stared out the windows at the stars, thinking thoughts she shared with no one. Flew the ship. She did not sleep much. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faces of those who had not made it. Danny with his explosives and his wild laugh, with her steady hands and calm eyes, with his young face and old soul. The others whose names would never be spoken in public, whose sacrifices would never be acknowledged by the governments that had condemned them. She flew the ship and tried not to think about how much it hurt. They arrived at Earth to find Admiral Laura Grant waiting for them. She stood in the hangar as the Nightfall landed, her face unreadable. When the survivors walked down the ramp, she saluted them. "You did it," she said. "They are sending transmissions across the galaxy. The Dominion is in chaos. Their remaining forces are retreating to their home systems. You saved an entire civilization." Jake looked at her with tired eyes. "We lost 8 people." "I know," Laura said softly. "Their names will be remembered. Not publicly, not officially, but I will remember them. And so will you." She handed each of them a small data chip. "Your pardons, your records have been sealed. As far as the rest of the galaxy is concerned, you are ordinary citizens with unremarkable histories. You are free." Free, the word felt strange to Jake. He had not been free in 15 years. He had forgotten what it meant. But there was one more thing to do. The Galactic Accord demanded an explanation. Representatives from dozens of species gathered in a great chamber on the diplomatic station orbiting Earth. They wanted to know how a single ship had destroyed an armada. They wanted to know what weapons humanity possessed. They wanted to know if they should be afraid. Admiral Grant addressed them herself. She stood at a podium before the assembled aliens, her voice calm and steady. "Humanity chose peace," she said. 300 years ago, when we first ventured into the stars, we made a decision. We would put away the weapons we had built. We would bury the instincts that made us dangerous. We would become a species known for art and diplomacy and cooperation. And we succeeded. Most of you know us as friendly and harmless." She paused. "But we did not forget what we are." The chamber was silent. Humans evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We faced predators with fangs and claws and venom. We survived ice ages that covered half our planet in frozen death. We endured plagues that killed millions. We fought wars against each other that nearly destroyed our civilization. And through all of it, we survived. We adapted. We became the most dangerous predators our world had ever seen. She looked at the assembled representatives, her eyes hard. "We chose to be kind because we know what we are capable of without kindness. We chose peace because we remember the horror of war. Do not mistake our choice for weakness. Do not assume that because we smile and trade and build art, we have forgotten how to fight." Her voice dropped to something cold. "They learned this lesson. They thought we were prey. They were wrong. 12 humans working alone destroyed their queen and shattered their armada. 12. Not our best soldiers or our greatest heroes. Just 12 people who remembered what humanity used to be." She leaned forward. "Do not make us remember again." The message spread across the galaxy. Species that had dismissed humans as harmless began to look at them differently. Not with fear exactly, but with a new respect. A new understanding. Humanity was not weak. Humanity had simply chosen to be gentle, and that choice could be unmade. Jake retired to a small colony world on the edge of human space. He bought a house near the ocean and planted a garden. Cole lived nearby, spending his days fishing and watching the sunset. Lisa Vance returned to research, studying alien life with renewed purpose. Cross disappeared, as intelligence operatives often do, but she sent messages sometimes, letting them know she was alive. Bray flew transport ships for a while, ferrying supplies to distant colonies. But eventually she settled down too, opening a small flight school for young pilots. She taught them to fly with skill and precision. She taught them to be brave. She never told them about the nightfall or the mission to Prime. Some stories were not meant to be shared. On quiet nights, when the stars were bright and the air was still, the survivors would gather together. They would cook food and share drinks and talk about nothing important. And sometimes, when the hour grew late, they would raise their glasses to those who had not made it. To Danny and to the others whose names the galaxy would never know, to the price of victory and the weight of survival. They were not heroes, they knew that. They were broken people who had done terrible things, but for one brief moment they had done something good. They had saved a world. They had changed the course of history. And maybe, Jake thought as he watched the stars, that was enough. Maybe that was all anyone could ask for. He finished his drink and went inside. Tomorrow there would be more gardens to tend, more sunsets to watch, more life to live. The war was over. The monsters had become men again. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the galaxy remembered what humanity had shown them. They remembered to be careful. They remembered to be kind. They remembered that Even the gentlest species can carry fire in their hearts. And they never forgot again.